We're just waiting for the signal. Are we good? Great. Okay, welcome back from lunch. I'm now going to, we've spoken about what we're doing locally, and some of you that follow what I say and the hashtags I use, one of my favorite is ABASA Global. And I'm really reminding us of, when we say for advancement of black accountants in Southern Africa, ABASA actually goes beyond that. Our name just hasn't changed, President, so maybe in my tenure. But this panel is really to introduce us and a better understanding of the relationship we have abroad with an organization called the National Association of Black Accountants, based in the USA. We're always talking about thinking global, acting locally. And I'm going to be supported in this panel by number 1 and number 6. No, but no, she says number 1 woman. So President Jeff and President Tanti, if you can join me, Futi, if you can join me on stage. She almost jumped off her seat. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling these 2 amazing presidents, and you can come join me so long, because they've actually been part of the relationship with NABA. I've actually got President Jeff's book, and if you get hold of this book and you buy this book and you read this book, it talks about how the formation of ABASA came about, but also looks at how we reached out to NABA based in the US and the work that ABASA did with NABA. And I really wanted this conversation because most of you know in June, together with my board, we were in NABA. And I got to meet Jesse, who's also here, and he is the treasurer of NABA, and he has come all the way from the US to join us today. So Jesse is going to co-pilot with me in this conversation. If you can come up, Jesse. So what we're trying to do here is drive a intergenerational conversation, but also enlighten our membership around what is this NABA. We can't just be excited about, oh, we're going to the US, and yes, they have their conference next year in June in New Orleans, and we normally take a delegation, but what does this partnership and this relationship mean, and what it should mean, and also to hear from you as our members, from a global perspective and transformation and the possible opportunities, what ABASA and NABA could be doing. So with that, my presidents, I think I want to go back to the history. And President Jeff, you write about it in the book. Can you just take us back for those that have not read the book? And you don't have to tell us too much that they do read the book. But just the beginning stages of the relationship with NABA, why you reached out, and what came out of that in your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President. It's such a privilege and honor for me to be here. And particularly because I'm now sharing a stage as the number 1 with the number 17. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
17.
It's not on. You'll have to do that again, number 1.
All right. It's in my pocket here.
What happened?
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Not yet, number 1.
Not yet. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
There you go. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So let me start afresh because the president has given me a very strong hint that I must compliment her again. So let me do that. It's a wonderful privilege for me to be here this afternoon. And I feel particularly privileged that I can share a stage with the current president, who's number 17. And that's over a 37-year, period. So, thank you very much. I don't know of very many organizations that, that are able to do this. But just to pick up in the interest of time on where we started and why we started this relationship with NABA. In 1985, when we established ABASA, we had a very hostile reception from the accounting institutions, in particular the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, because they were very suspicious, of our motives. Why do you need this organization? And so when in our engagement with them, they then suggested that it would be much better for us to locate this organization within the institute rather than outside of the institute. And we're not particularly keen to do that because, ABASA was a black initiative. It was by black people, for black people. And we wanted to have our independence. So the relationship was not very strong. It was very hostile. They were also concerned about the fact that we might have a political agenda because, at that time, all of our political leaders were out of the country and they were banned. And so, and there was a view, and perhaps correctly so, that many of these organizations like the BMF and the BLA were essentially, the internal organs of the political movements. So we had to give SAICA the assurance that we're not a political organization, we're a professional organization trying to advance the interests of black accountants. But not long after that, there was a call by various liberation movements for the release of Mandela. And of course, ABASA was also part of that. And so we also aligned ourselves with all of those movements. And so, that made SAICA even more nervous. In the same year when we established ABASA, we then became aware of the fact that there was this other organization, the National Association of Black Accountant States. We then reached out to them and they invited us to their convention the same year, which was held in Dallas, Texas. And Mashudu Ramana was executive director of ABASA at the time, and I then, set off to Dallas to go and, participate in the convention. So when we got there, they also arranged a plenary conversation like this, for us now to talk about, because, we reached out to them. And so the theme of that plenary was, why did you guys reach out to us? What is it that you're trying to accomplish, and so on. So Mashudu and I were on stage, talking to all the NABA members, and it was so quiet in that room. You could actually hear a pin drop. And we had to talk for about 20 minutes. So obviously, Mashudu and I assumed that we were saying some very profound things. That's why it was so quiet in the room. And then after about 20 minutes, then came the Q&A. The first question was, because people have perceptions of us as black people on the continent. So the first question was, where did you guys learn to speak English? Honestly. Where did you guys?
That was you guys, Jesse.
Yes.
That wasn't me.
Yeah, so Jesse, that's what we kind of experienced there. But nonetheless, we had a very, very constructive dialogue, and in the interest of time, I want to cut it short. We learned a hell of a lot from them. The following year, 1996, we had our first convention at the Carlton Center, and we had 5 of the NABA representatives of the 10-hour convention in 1986. So even though they were fascinated by the language, we must have said something profound, to bring 5 of them out, because that was the current president, the outgoing president, Ramona Henderson, the incoming president, Butch James, some of the executive members. There was Linda, she was Gaston at the time, she's now Linda Salisbury, and Edward Jenkins, so they all came out to support us, at that our very first convention. And just as an aside, I do have to try and sell a book. So if you want to read more about Linda,
Go read the book, guys.
so if you do want to read more about Linda and Edwin, they have shared with me their reflections, on that very first visit, which I've now included in the book. But I also just want to say to you that, there's so much that we take for granted in this country. I think earlier speakers spoke about it, the fact that, we see the poverty and we see the deprivation. And sometimes, it doesn't move us because we're so accustomed to it. So when the DABA delegation came to South Africa, and we had to take them through to Soweto, or should I say Soweto, as we say. But I did that just for some of the white people who are here, So we took them through to Soweto. Soweto. And so when they saw the poverty and the deprivation, Ramona Anderson, who was the outgoing president, right, cried. And I'm not talking about shedding a quiet tear. I mean, she was just so emotionally overwhelmed. And I remember that I had to comfort her, you know. So it was quite interesting for me, you know, and it resonates so strongly with me when I heard this morning that we've got to be mindful of these things, you know, that we see, because, you know, we do have a responsibility to use our skills and our experience and our knowledge to try and make a difference. We learned a lot of things. I'm going to wrap up now in the interest of time. One of the things that we learned was that NABA provided a lot of scholarships to aspirant accountants. So we came back, interacted with what was then the Public Accountants and Auditors Board in SAICA, and we then set up, because of what we had learned at NABA, Jesse, we then set up the Chartered Accountants Education Trust, which then made bursaries available. And when I had the book launched the other day, I can't remember when it was, one of the members actually walked up to me and said to me, Brajev, I was one of the recipients of a bursary.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that we learned there. The other thing that we learned was that, you know, some of our members were starting to establish accounting firms, and they needed support, and we learned from NABA that they had established a practitioners forum. We came back, we established a practitioners forum. In 1986, we established, and in 1996, okay, so a decade later, when I became an advisor to the then Minister of Public Enterprises, right, we gave the Practitioners Forum the Transnet audit, for example, you know.
Yeah.
So that was something, you know, significant that we learned. And I must also make this point, bearing in mind that I'd said that we had this hostile relationship with the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. We discovered that NABA had very strong relationships with the major accounting firms, right? So when they came here, we thought, no, we would leverage the fact that they've got those strong relationships. So we took them around to SAICA, we took them around to all the major accounting firms, and honestly, guys, you know, from that day onwards, our relationship with all of those organizations just changed like 180 degrees. So let me leave it there for now and then give the other panelists an opportunity to make a contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, number one. So I believe that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there are presidents that followed and went there. And I know when I speak to Mam Foti, she speaks about the strong relationships she also still has with NABA members and stalwarts.
Yeah.
And the work that we've done, and you speak about the Practitioners Forum. I think today it's called the Business Forum of ABASA. So I think we need to start thinking about what are we doing with that business forum to emulate what has started there, so that we're not just scratching the surface. How do we go global with this, you know? So Mamfoti, I think just in carrying on the conversation, you come along, how many years later?
I have no idea.
And you also push through, and I think Deloitte was very supportive in that movement, going global and supporting you in the work that you're doing as president as well. And I see it even when I went to NABA, they headlined the convention, you know, but that gave me an opportunity to also have this relationship and keep it going. I would like you to take us through some of the things that in your time were established or revived, and perhaps what you'd want to see us doing or reviving through a NABA and ABASA relationship.
Madam President, thank you so much for having me back here. I only arrived yesterday, but I'm already just overflowing with joy of being in this environment, because I'm with my tribe. So naturally, I feel the comfort. So yesterday's session was around women empowerment, which is a topic that's very close to my heart today, because this panel before us was talking about the political and economic transformation in this country. But economic transformation of women remains a big issue in this country. And that's the agenda that we have to drive during our time. And in my view, I believe it will go a long way to also help us drive the political one around women being the leaders in that arena. So I just had to say that. Coming back to your the conversation with Naba, Jeff had done the heavy lifting in terms of relationship building, but I came into the presidency of ABASA during the time when the globe was globalizing.
Yeah.
Therefore, it meant in the profession the profession was developing cutting-edge accountants that were going to be able to service clients across the world. So sitting in my environment in Deloitte, I looked at the experience that we were getting as we were being trained as accountants. And of course, being the president of ABASA, I realized that major part of our portfolio, which were the black accounting firms, did not have the same opportunity that we had training in that environment.
Yeah.
So it became a problem for me.
Okay.
So I went around thinking, what can we do around providing an opportunity for a global experience? Because if the country was developing leaders to be global savvy, and the majority of people that looked like us were also in the environments where you could not get that training, then that was a problem. So then we then had a relationship whereby working through the department, the embassy of the US, because they had to give us the visa and everything, we, one of the successful projects that we had was a transfer of accountants from the, what do you call it now? Business division here, but there in the US they call it the division of firm. Yes. So the firms of NABA members would then exchange with our South Africans. So we took South African article clerks to go and do time there. I recall, where's Sati? Yes, so where is it? So I recall a saying right at the beginning with Sati to say, Sati, we will have to do this. And I went around asking the firms, because now I'm in one environment in Deloitte, and then I'm assisting the black firms to now do this training. So Cindy Nkonki was one of the first people who just said to me, you know what, here's members of my staff, let them go on this project. So they were the first one to go, and to cut a long story short, Sati can tell you, because later so many followed, including your daughter, Sati, had that exchange experience. So that was really fundamental. And what was amazing actually was that the partners in the divisional firm were like to me, yo, Futi, these people are like cutting edge. They are so well trained. Actually, our staff are surprised at the level of which they operate. Yes. And I was like, those are South Africans, man. Anyway, those are South Africans, they had arrived. And it was a short-term run, but at the same time, hugely impactful. Yes. In that it then provided that confidence, people went there and then they came back. So it rolled on some time. I mean, given the negotiations that went behind setting that up, it is, I must say, Madam President, sad for me that we lost that. Because that was a relationship that cut across. Those visas were done just like this, because we had negotiated them and through over time, and that was what we lost. And I believe that we still need to do that, find a way to give that experience to our young South Africans, and even go further to give experience to your members so that they don't ask about the English story in
I was waiting for that.
in 2022. You run the risk of that. I know some president who was president in past 4 years in another country that remained nameless hadn't gone out, so yeah, it happens. So the one other thing, like Jeff, I mean, we went around to learn a lot of things, and so did they learn.
Yeah.
For an example, we went there, they had a magazine, which we quickly had.
Yes,
to
the forum.
came back the forum.
Yes, which is
and
back.
Madam President has got it back. So which really captured the story of our stakeholders and also about ABASA, and which was extremely useful. And then there was the business element where we were looking at how do we then work together to really do professional services within the continent as partners. So when you have to take a big assignment, you need a partner. So we were at that stage of developing it into that, to say, okay, we've trained, we now need the money, that the continent was promising. So just to cut a long story short, because I can spend the whole day talking about this thing. I'm passionate about the skills development. And one of what I would leave with you today is pursue vigorously, again, the transfer. Secondly, look at the business opportunity, because nothing has changed. That was there then that necessitated us to set up this. Still the same. So let's revive that. I always say to you, at your service, and then when you call me, I'm far away. Right? I am always at Madam President's service. I maintain the relationship. I even went 2 years ago to your 50th celebration, Jeff. It was amazing. You were there in the center there, Jeff, and then as the narration of when South Africa made the relationship. We were in that whole wall, where it stipulated it. I'll end there and just talk later.
Thank you.
So when I was there, Madam Pres, I was excited because I had revived. I came back to convention and then they showed me a picture and they're with you. I'm like, but you don't tell me these things. So you don't travel without me. You need to travel with me. Jesse, things are being said here around what was started. And I think ABASA going back and saying, we want to reignite this. And I'll be very honest, in our conversations with you, even the president, who is not here today, but very, very supportive of an ABASA, and very deliberate. And President Ashley is not here, but has called him out on a lot of things. From, don't laugh, number 13 and number 12. Around how this organization and ABASA should be structured so that it's able to make an impact. And for me, I think we can learn so much from you guys. Your president is president and CEO, and has built a structure where you're employing people to actually do the work, and even when you talk to a Ghislaine, you need to have your ducks in a row, and those are the things that I believe we're learning from ANABA, that the opportunities are there, but how do we work together to actually access the capacity to actually make impact? So that's pressure now on your side, because I'm ready to work. And we're talking about the business forum a lot. And I think one of your slogans is developing business leaders. Can you just take us through, Jesse, when you listen to what we started, how can we now move this forward? And I see Emma's nodding because she's part of the business forum, and she's like, hey, can we have this thing because we'd like to do this exchange thing? Is this something we would be ready to take up like today?
Oh, yeah. Let me give first of all, make some context to who I am and honored to be here. My name is Jesse Rose. I'm the National Treasurer. I've been a member of NABA since 1994, 28 years, and we have some history there. And I share that context because I come to you not just as a national member. I was a student member at one point, chapter president at the local level, regional level, and now national level. And I'm also working at Amazon, and I work in inclusion, diversity, equity. So I love the mention to diversity and inclusion because I used to be an accountant side, IT audit, and I transitioned 3 years ago over to diversity. Got to understand the impact and what I can bring from that risk mindset to that space of work. So I share that. And of course, in Guy fashion, I have her notes. So I want to make sure, and she's probably listening. I think she's online. So when I paraphrase a couple things she wanted to share with y'all. One, she said thankful. She's very thankful for partnering with ABASA. We look forward to growing together and continue to do the good work together. The board chair sends their regards. Madam President and CEO sends hers. And we plan to be with y'all next year, right? And also looking forward to hosting y'all for a second time in New Orleans in June.
Yes,
we are proud sponsors of ABASA. We committed to $5,000 US to sponsorship there. And like she mentioned, always let's path and pave a more just world together. And I want to emphasize that part. Yep. I want to emphasize that part because what I'm hearing, the legacy that's sitting in this right here amongst, I'm honored to be in that space. And looking at, NABA just celebrated 50 years a couple years ago. And I see y'all quickly approaching that same milestone. Mm-hmm. And seeing how much has changed and also has not changed in our profession. Yeah. And one of the things we realized and heard some dialogue in earlier sessions, even our name, we went from, formerly known as National Association of Black Accountants to now it is NABA Inc. One, I love that. It was a mouthful to say that whole thing. But two, is really, how do we really empower Black business leaders at every step of the journey? Yeah. And when I say Black business leaders, I'm talking about as young as your daughter, their leaders day to day, to you're retiring, you sit on a corporate board. How do we continue to empower and support each other? And so NABA understands that responsibility and connectedness to do so. We also acknowledge our responsibility to go beyond the walls of North America, right? And it's how do we partner across? Yeah. I have a funny story to share. My daughter was about 6 years old, and our first international trip, we went to Germany, and we were walking out in Germany streets in Hamburg, and she said, "Dad, Mom, why they talk different?" Right? Legit question, right? Yeah. I said, Jessica is her name. We talk different. But in order to have her get that lesson at that age, that says a lot. The accessibility that we have today to be more global is waking the minds up, that rich young mind up at such a young age, that she was able to get that at 6. That I probably didn't get till I was 36. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I share that. And so for me, to your question is, we're in action now. Yeah. Right? But us having this conversation today is exemplifying that partnership that we honor and connect. And someone that's been traveling around the world for a few years between different companies, I understand the importance. And some of the conversation with some of your partners here was explain, hey, how do we work together to make sure we have representation both in South Africa and back in the U.S., I said, through our partnerships that we're building here today. Yeah. So we have to stay in action mode. And I said, I would encourage each of us to think about, from my seat, how can I contribute and make an impact? Each one of us has an active role to take action and not to go look elsewhere. You can keep them accountable, but keep yourself accountable on the action you take today. So I am committed personally and professionally, with my Amazon hat and my NABA hat and my Jesse hat, to be here with y'all.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. So I like what you're talking about, your daughter and her exposure at a young age. And for me, naturally, I want to go into the young people in our membership. And what sort of opportunities would you like to see with ABASA around that? Because I think our first, my first interaction and seeing what we could do, we were sitting in COVID. So we couldn't go to a NABA conference, but there was a virtual one. And Ghislaine gave our students, and some of them may be here, the opportunity to attend virtually, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to work together? Because I'd really like to see our young people exposed to this, you know? What sort of programs are we doing? Because even when I went to NABA, the influx of young people being bussed in by the universities
Yes.
to come to this, I'd really like to see South African students get that experience. Your thoughts on that?
Oh,
no pressure.
I love that question. No, I'm a father of two. My kids are a little older now. That young girl, Jessica, is now 19 in college, and then my son is 23. That's an important question. One of the programs I love that we have is called ACAP, Accounting Career Awareness Program, and that's at the high school students,
Yeah.
right? Looking to even consider the possibility of college. And it's not just for the student; it's also for the parents. The parents, we're protectors, right? We want to look out for our children, and our fears sometimes prohibit growth, unintentionally, right? And so ACAP program is a chance for both the parents to awaken the possibility financially and just the possibility of letting their young one go off to school. And it gives the student a chance. Now, of course, we call it Accounting and Career Awareness Program, but you don't have to focus on accounting. We just want to make sure you think about school. And so that's one is the subset starting from high school. And then what you saw too as well is our student chapters, right?
Yeah.
Participating at the conventions,
Yeah.
regional conferences, encouraging and giving them the skill sets to make sure they are ready and will be successful in the corporate level.
Yeah.
And I'm challenging NABA, Guy's probably on the phone too, is that we stand our brand, our name is the impact of COVID. We still haven't really seen that yet.
Yep.
Y'all understand me on that? You got youth
Yeah.
at all levels that have been impacted. So another layer of a personal layer for me, I used to own a business and I'm still heavily involved in nonprofits that focus on middle school students and elementary students. And what you learn from that experience is typically trauma is what impacts their education. They miss something in that classroom. They miss that lesson. They're intelligent. They just missed that lesson. Could have been divorce, could have been family, passing the family, could have been relocation. Now think about COVID, impact, trauma, all at one time now, home, in front of a computer screen. My parents had 2 jobs, right? They were right at the front line, and I'm sitting here, should be studying, and I can't get the lesson. I get passed through to the next school year. I didn't get that lesson last year. Now I got even more burden to pick up. This is what has happened and still happening to our youth. And so for me is how quickly can we mobilize to pick up as early as possible to lessen the impact and give them the skill sets and tools and resources. So by the time they actually do get to high school and to college, they're well prepared.
Yeah. I'm hoping the stakeholders here are hearing, because when we start implementing some of these things, we're going to need money, ne? So please. And Thabo, because you're so loud, MC, I know that we are looking at a leadership program as well. And Thabo is our chairperson of leadership at a national level, and really crafting what it is that we're going to design. And I would imagine, and naturally, we'd want there to be a global aspect to that. So Thabo, can you maybe just take us through your thoughts around what a NABA relationship can bring to this particular leadership program that we're trying to put together?
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Press. I wasn't prepared for this, but
You must stay ready,
it's
my
such
leader.
an honor. Coming back to hear all of this. So through our leadership development program, we're looking to get our members. So now we already have the numbers, Prajaf. We've got the CAs. Now it's a question of we've got the ACCA, we've got the CMAS, we've got the RGAs, and so forth. And now we need to get them into board positions, deliberately place them into board positions, and that's where we're starting. But we also see that there's a void. Once someone is signed off, whatever articles that we're doing, there's a need for a management development program in the middle, right? And then going back to the high school level as well. So from a NABA perspective, I think some of the things that we'd want to do is study how, benchmark ourselves against how you are doing it in the American context, and how, in South Africa we can do it. But also if there are any other opportunities. So for example, Yale, Howard University, they do have a lot of fellowships, they do have a lot of scholarships and whatnot. How can we leverage off those for executive development to bring people into the US? So I think maybe I'm going to stop it there, Madam Press, to say, just to plant the seed, and then we can take the conversation forward.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because you already planted the seed right now that I can bring back to the broader board. I think it's having that seat at the table, which you all have.
Madam President, can I just make a comment about leadership? Because we've been talking a lot about leadership.
Yes,
This is also on the basis of what I observed at NABA and what I had observed here within ABASA as well. So we talk about leadership programs. But ABASA itself, our organization, is an incubator for leadership development.
Yes.
We must not forget
Yes.
that, right? ABASA itself,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I really, really want to encourage, our members to get involved in the structures of ABASA, because you will get the kind of exposure that you will, that you can only dream about. Now, just to sell one more book, let me tell you this. Sell one more book. Let me just tell you this. Somewhere in the book, right, and you have to get right to the end because it's an annexure, okay? We have a list of the 17 presidents of ABASA, right? And so and I think Mondi was also talking about what sets ABASA apart from other organizations. Because our view has always been, and there I know President number 12, I think, is looking at me very intently. Our view has always been that you come into ABASA, right, as, say, the president, you're going to serve a 3-year term, right? And we expect you to run as hard as possible during your 3-year tenure. If I look at President Linda, for example, she's already done the running in 1 year, okay? So we expect you to run as hard as you can, and then you hand over the baton to some fresh legs. So we've done that 16 times already, And I can tell you, when you become the president, happened with me clearly, it also gives you the visibility. And I think I wouldn't be sitting here on this platform, to be honest, if not for the visibility, not only the visibility, but also the opportunity that ABASA had provided for me to develop those latent, sort of leadership abilities. So I really want to encourage you. Let's get involved. Let's think clearly. We have to think about programs, but the organization itself is a very significant vehicle for leadership development.
So true.
Madam President.
Yeah, Madam Press, I just want to really confirm this point. So many young people approach me to say, I want to join the board. Then I ask them, what professional organization are you in? And they are not there. And this really, there is no other place where you just come in and you know nothing and suddenly you are the head of the chapter. and then right there, you're the head. No one can argue. You start acting the act.
Yes.
And you copy this one, you mix, and that's you there leading. And you stand and talk in public with these professional people, because we are a bunch of professionals, right? Therefore, we're not just the run-on-the-mill. We're really the creme de la creme, right? So you come. So you come as this young person to practice. We cannot take that for granted. So one of my appeal, yesterday I spoke to some students, and I was glad that they came from university, because the first thing when I looked around the room, I was wondering, are there some university students, some working young people? Because honestly, there is no other platform. So one of our campaigns has to get as much from the accounting profession as possible in the universities to attend this, from really bust them if we can. Because also just the exposure of that, and then watching us do the thing. So I want to echo Jeff to say that is one of the action points. We can't have a room full of us. Okay, we must have us, of course. Self-preservation.
Yes.
But at the same time, really just that orientation,
Yes.
you know, of working amongst the profession and just seeing the humility of the people in this room.
Yes.
Meanwhile, they do profound work, they hold such profound position. There's a lot of values to pick up this. And then they become your tribe.
Yeah.
You can't walk away from them because all of a sudden we're like, okay, if I could find out what about that room in Cape Town, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yes.
So really, I want to echo your sentiments,
Thank
Jeff.
Thank you,
Can
President.
I share a quote? Okay, please clap. Yeah. Yes. Can I share a quote that relates to this topic? And also, someone mentioned a question earlier about money, so I want to connect the dots with one of the students around what we're talking about right here.
Yes,
Is that okay?
yes.
So here's a quote I have. Our children will grow up in a world that sees them, but more importantly, a world where they see themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the thrive and we're going toward. That's one of my close friends that has origin culture and these doll babies that shows all
Yeah.
variations and colors of blackness. You know,
Yes.
African descent to Black Americans is beautiful.
Yes.
What I want to share too, to your point, I use us as an example. We're living proof of this board involvement. The reason why I got on a board initially back in college was I was afraid to speak in front of large groups. And so, I said, well, why not get involved in a chapter? Did not know I would become the chapter president. So I can tell you, and start my own chapter at Drexel University, right?
Yeah.
And the legacy continues. So now I sit on 3 boards,
Yeah.
right? And then I've been nominated to do training for corporate boards, right? And so for those that ask about money, you get paid on corporate boards, right? And so nonprofit board is an excellent training ground
Yes.
to show your input and your
Correct.
in context.
Correct.
And us being in finance, huge to be chair of the finance committees, which is one of the powerful committees on a
Correct.
corporate board.
Correct.
So not only you on the corporate board, you sit in one of the most powerful committees of the corporate board. And they pay. I don't know how much they hear, but the average median income for a corporate board position in the U.S. is $250,000. That's for 4 meetings a year. $250,000.
Send me.
Send me.
Call him.
And when they ask
Jesse,
you,
we need people here,
I
man.
know, but it's true here too. Trust me, globalization. They need market share. Amazon is coming here, so trust me, right? Or is here, and so I say to say that they ask for your board resume.
Yeah.
It's tenure over a period of time. They're looking back. Wow, this person's been involved since I was a student, or they were a student
Yep.
on a board, right? And hey, it's never too late. You get involved when you're professional level. But I highly encourage is both development and cash flow opportunity as you move along in your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. So thank you for helping me sell the value of our membership.
Yes.
So guys, please pay your membership. I'm increasing next year. Ne? So I want to, I don't know if this means I'm in my Q&A session, right? It is.
Okay.
So I'm happy to open the floor because we always say, hi, Madam Pres, what are you doing there? I'm happy to open the floor. Dando, question?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, I'd like to thank President Jeff. You took up the call from Prof. Wiseman Gotlo when he said that there are many black organizations, and these organizations have done amazing work, but our stories haven't been told. And you took up this mandate and you ran with it, and of course, when I get a free copy of the book, from cover to cover, and I really hope that the lessons that you have in there will help me in my current capacity. My question is for Mr. Jesse.
But
So-
before you go there, let me just say that I'm not buying that free copy. Eh? Thank you.
I tried. So my question is directed to Mr. Jesse. So I would assume that in the US, your strongholds in terms of student chapters would be based at Howard, Tuscany, these historically black colleges. And at a national level, I'm sure you'll have relationships with these universities. And then through your pipeline development with your students, you'll normally engage. So as a student leader within ABASA, I would like to know what are some of the mechanisms that you'll have in terms of not only training, but succession planning. Because within, okay, I'm releasing house secrets now. Hopefully I don't get hungry. Okay, but the main concern is how do you do it? Or the main question is how do you do it?
Well, trust me, while hearing the story just now about the chapters and what you just shared, same challenges. It's like literally identical. Culture transcends physical geolocation. You know, that's what I love about blackness. We everywhere. I think so. I'll share challenges, right? And I'll share from my lens when I was a student chapter, which goes back a little bit, and staying close to it is making sure we're meeting our students where they're at, right? And providing tools and mechanisms that connect. So, for example, I can send emails all day, but if you're not checking emails and you're a mobile technology, looking at Instagram or looking at other vehicles, am I connecting with the members, right? And so that's one. Two is also relevance. And so the generation today see things differently than we do. They're not acknowledging the challenges and struggles that we have. Again, I have benefits of a 23-year-old and 19-year-old. And they're not ignoring, they see, they witness some of the stuff y'all know and heard about in our own government with President Trump was in office. They witnessed that, they seen that, they understand those pain points that exist. But they also have a more diverse friendship-based, conversation-based in that component. So the challenge is how we make sure we stay relevant to our student members to see value. So one is understand the power and understand the need for understanding how money works. I don't care what profession you're in. If you don't understand how money works, and Guy talks all the time, then you're lost. And that's why you could be an influencer, you could be an entrepreneur, which is awesome. I don't care what you do, you still gotta be able to read financial statements, gotta understand balance sheet, income statements, right? And so how do we connect with the students at their level that makes sense, that see value? So two ways. One is tools and mechanisms. Also our structure. So we have our local chapters, right? Our local chapter will most have an advisor, right? The school has an advisor, but also our chapters have an advisor that connects with the students to make sure we're engaged. Not just to check in on compliance, which is important, making sure that compliance and follow their paperwork, but it creates a reason for us to stay connected to the students. So have a reason for our professional chapter to connect, and then also we hold our professional chapter accountable by chapter of the year awards and so forth, but how strong their student chapters are. So drive both incentive and structure drives engagement. It doesn't happen naturally, unfortunately, because then you'll have some areas are very passionate and they'll work really well and other areas disconnected. We have those challenges too. But having a mechanism in place to say compliance, structure with advisory, and check-in points with the students, and getting input for the students. You know, as a parent, I hope my kid's not listening. We're always big on pushing down rules to them and say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Your energy is present, your door energy is present. I'm talking about kids a lot. But the reality is, hey, let me hear from you. What makes sense? What's needed? How can we connect? Are we doing the right thing? Are we missing something? By doing that, you enroll our students better. And we can learn a lot from y'all. And so that's the conversation that should be happening, needs to be happening, and is happening. And I say all three of those because in some cases it's not happening, in some cases it is happening, and how we learn from those conversations. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Madam President, I'm going to take the liberty as number one, right, to also make a comment. Okay. To also make a comment. So when we talk about ABASA being an incubator for leadership development, it starts with the student chapters.
Yes.
Definitely.
During my tenure, Freeman Nomvalu was the president of of the student chapter, and today, as you know, he's the chief executive of SAICA.
Yeah.
Right, so I think we just need to, throughout the organization, this thing cascades,
Yeah.
throughout the organization. I just want to make that point.
Very
Thank you,
true,
President.
Very true.
Oh, President Sati. What number? Number 5. Okay, number 5. It's going to be number 5.
Version 27.
Thank you, President. I'd like to share that I was privileged and honored to have been to at least 5 NABA conferences.
Wow.
Yes, during that time.
And in one division of firms, what do you call it, a seminar. So what we've learned from the NABA, and at one stage we went with a huge delegation from South Africa. I think President Jeff, Futi, Abashoni, Victor, myself, and there were many others like Trifosa as well. So we went to your leadership development course, which lasted about 3 or 4 days. And it was a partnership with Harvard.
Yes.
And we got certificates to say NABA and Harvard gave us this privilege. So if you can just share with the audience regarding that partnership and what you have in terms of development of your members. Thanks.
I love that one, and I'll share from a lived experience. So what he's referencing, there was 2 executive tracks. One was executive leadership track, EL, and then one was management track. So it depends on your tenure and length in the corporate world. You were either early management level or more experienced level. And it was a 2-day program in the start of the convention. And then 1 year, you're right, 1 year we actually were on campus at the university. And at the end of the program, you actually received a certificate of completion. And so what that opened up was several channels. One is that continuous development, that even though now you are engaged at, you're a senior manager or a manager or director or whatever it may be in your respective companies, that development still continues, right? 2, it show the connections and value with the university of the importance of that partnership of, hey, even when you leave the hallways of our colleges and universities, we're still with you in your journey of professionalism. That was symbolic, and we still nurture those partnerships and relationships. So if you're not connected, I'm sure you are, to your universities, I strongly encourage, because they welcome and thirst of those partnerships. And so that's why we lived through that, and we continue to figure out what other ways we can do in our future conventions to continue light programs such as what you experienced. Now I went through it 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. It was awesome.
So you still have this? The
Yes.
program?
Yeah, it's modified. Some more to come in New Orleans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we're coming to New Orleans to hear more about this.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
15 seconds. Another one. Okay?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zamaswazi, and I have a question for all the presidents, right? So I am not an accountant, I am a tax advisor. And I saw that ABASA is mainly for accountants. So I wanted to find out, like, for example, you guys have partnered with SAICA, ACCA, and CIMA. In the future, is there potential to perhaps partner, like, with your I'm part of the site professional body, which is the South African Institute of Tax Professionals. In the future, would ABASA be open to, like, partner with those type of memberships, maybe even SAIPA? Not sure if you guys are already in partnership with SAIPA, but yeah, that's my question.
Can I answer now?
Yeah, correct.
Yes. So we are in partnership with SAIPA. You said SAIPA? Yes, they're even in the room right there. The chair and the CEO are right there. We have an MOU together, and we have a national council that was implemented this year that has representatives of all the accounting bodies. And as we said, actually, your CEO has reached out to ABASA, so we are in discussions around how we then partner. So yes, in my view, you are an accountant. Are we done with it? We are negative 1 minute and any comments, President Andile? You can. Oh, I thought you had a comment. One more comment and we can close it.
Where do I go?
Who came first? Let's a fresh hand, please.
No, mine is very quick. I was going to say.
Please
following on
introduce
from-
yourself, Lebo,
Oh,
properly.
apologies.
Thank you.
Lebu Pasha, the head of economy. Following on the session from yesterday, looking at the business forum and the value proposition, we'd really love to get some feedback from you on the kind of value you'd like to see from the business forum and how you'd like to be supported, both professionally and in terms of growing the kind of work that you do.
Great. Thanks, Lebo. Right. Are we done, MC, with questions? We good? We can wrap it up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for engaging with my number 1 and number 6 and number...
Well,
What number?
Well, Herschel, since I'm representing Herschel,
Yes.
Herschel's number 27.
Oh, okay. Sure, we are babies. But thank you for this conversation. For me, it was very important. And I think we need to have more conversations like these. I get the sense that there are so many other things that are happening. And how do we make sure that we don't recreate the wheel? And we just move with what is there and refine it to our times. So, Jesse, I want to particularly say thank you on this platform for coming all the way to represent Ghislaine and the board and NABA Inc. And I really look forward to the engagements and to the partnership that we're going to have, and we're going to enhance for our people. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
Yes, yes, that's good. Jeff, I mustn't fall now. I once fell in an ABASA conference.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for the president.
For the board.
I would like to ask the next panel, Polani, Swazi, Elmarie, to get mic'd up there. And then when I come back, I think we would. I think maybe perhaps whilst they get mic'd, maybe we can open up for one more question. John T, I know I stopped you. Do you want to continue the question? Is there anyone else? Or maybe it is a reply to Lebo's question about what value would you like to see from a business forum? And maybe if there's no question, I will ask my own question, and this is going to be from Mbali. Mbali, Swazi? Zama Swazi. Sure. Okay. So I think the question is, you're a site member, you're a tax practitioner. I don't know if you can share the microphone. I think the question that I have for you is, why would you want to belong to an organization like ABASA? What informs that question? Because I think it's also very important for us to kind of get that feedback. All right, over to you. I think I also need to get Mike, ne?
Oh.
Yeah. Madam Press, so the question that we've asked is, right? as someone who would want to join ABASA,
now you need to
what is it about ABASA that's attracted them? Because I think this feedback feeds very good into our value proposition.
I'm going to go get the tissue because
Over
I've
to
got
you,
a
Zama.
fever like you wouldn't believe that I've got so many
I'll start off with the confession. I didn't know much about the association because, every time we hear accountants, us tax people, we just go the opposite direction. I think today was very informative to find out more about the association. And for starters, I'm black. So the fact that it's a black association, everything black, I'm like, yes, I'm there. I'm there. So it's exciting to hear that there's a black association that is looking out for black professionals to enhance them and advance them in their profession. Being a tax advisor, we always feel like we don't it's always like SAICA is always up there,
forgot
and
to go and check
SITE is like, yeah, we see you guys, but you know, but at the same time, we all had to do articles for 3 years. We all had to write board exams. We kind of like had the same journey. So now to hear of an association like this and being black, you kind of like feel like you are seen. You know, you're not there in the shadow and wondering, is my profession ever going to be taken seriously? But at the same time, it's quite serious because everybody's a taxpayer and every company is a taxpayer. So, and it also creates the platform for people to be more informed about tax as a profession. That, you know, there's actually so many options for you. You can be an accountant, you can be an auditor, you can be a financial manager, and now with ABASA, they can also promote tax to our black people. And also I love the exchange program opportunity because currently I'm a tax advisor of South Africa, but this would give an opportunity that if maybe I do an exchange program, I'll get to learn about taxes in the United States or in the United Kingdom, and especially with tax, we rely a lot on the UK case laws. You know, it's like the heart of tax. Everything when you go to court cases and all of that, and even when you look at the Supreme Court of Appeal, it's always the UK case laws that you use to motivate your argument. So having an association like this. Tax students will be able to go to the UK for 6 months and have a better understanding of the court cases and not just hear about it there in the air. So this is very, very, I'd love to be part of the association because of Black excellence, Black advancement, and promoting my profession as well so that we can be seen finally.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, that's why.
All right. I think it's important for us to every now and then get this kind of feedback. You know, I think I was speaking to President Kumalo earlier, Andile, and we were talking about value proposition. You know, how do we as ABASA, you know, offer more? And I think we've got a business case now. I would approve that. And I think, Madam President, we had already spoken about SITE, and we're excited to be onboarding and to see how far we can take this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also just like to thank the President for, we do this tech teaming thing sometimes when we are hosting. So for the final panel for today, we will be, if you look at the trajectory, we've been talking about education in the morning, we've been talking about leadership, how do we change the narrative, and now why does ABASA exist? What kind of leverage, you know, between ABASA and the USA. And now in this panel, I want us to talk more about how do we deliberately and intentionally push for transformation in boards and management structures in South Africa. Now, joining me on stage are 3 people that are very instrumental in this profession. So I would like to start with Elmarie. So Elmarie is an executive director of non-executive directors careers, so NED careers. So her job mainly focuses on, you know, ensuring recruiting directors for boards and coaching them. Ladies and gentlemen, Elmarie. I'll tell you more about their background as we go. The next gentleman that's joining us is Sazi Ndwandwa. Sazi is a CA and has a Master's of Philosophy in Management Coaching. Sazi. The last gentleman is the CFO of the Auditor General of South Africa, Mr. Polani Sogombela. Now, I don't know if this is on. Is this on? All right, cool. So, in having this conversation around pushing for transformation in boards, I think we've spent a lot of time proving why we need diversity on boards. And today I just want us to talk about how do we do it, right? So, Elmarie, so you were a teacher, so you taught high school?
Yes.
And you transitioned and worked for, what, executive development company, and then from then you became a coach for executives. Just take us through that journey, why is there a need for directors to start off with?
Okay, I believe that good governance, boards that function properly, and coaching can bring about transformation. And at this stage, the pool of leaders are so incredibly small, and not just in South Africa. I work with international boards. I've been doing this since the beginning of 2013, and I only recently started working with South African boards, actually, because my client base overseas was so heavy. And I can tell you that in every single country, the pool of leaders are way too small to really represent the people. Sure. So you see the same people on the same boards over and over and over again. And people like you really struggle to get a foot into that market. You know, you've got all this experience, you've got all this knowledge, you've got jewels that you can really bring to a board, to bring transformation, not just within companies, to bring transformation to this country, to the world. You've got the solutions to the problems that this world faces, but you're sitting within your own company behind a desk. They don't hear this from you. And when you start serving on a board, when you make yourself available, that brings that transformation. And therefore, this diversity is incredibly important. And I know we think of diversity in terms of race and gender.
Sure.
But I've also seen diversity in age. The youngest person I've helped find a board role was 17 years old.
Whoa.
This girl is 19 now, she's got her 4th board role. Now, one of those, she serves on an advisory board with a company. So her future is open. This is what she's going to do. She's going to be in governance and in board leadership the rest of her life. And she's passionate about it. But when she was 17 years old, she contacted me and said, this is what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. I'll go to university, I'll do all of these things, but this is what I want to do.
Sure.
And she started on youth boards. So age is a big thing. Another thing is your religion. Because everybody on a board cannot believe the exact same thing.
Sure.
You need to have the input from others. The other thing is your political views. That brings diversity to who you are. Your lived experience. I lived in Australia for 4 years, and I had a board contact me from abroad who said, listen, we want to penetrate the Australian market, but they didn't know how. So I helped them, I served just for a 6-month term to help them to know how to penetrate the Australian market. You are sitting in South Africa. You have no idea how many companies there are across the globe who want to penetrate the South African and the African market, and they want you to serve on there. So think about what makes you different. What do you have? What did you bring? How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What kind of schooling did you have? Look at your whole background. Look at yourself as a whole person, not just what you studied, not just who you are, man, woman, black or white, but everything, because you need to bring everything, your whole self to the board if you want to be an effective board member who delivers the mandate they are being set there for.
Okay. Whoa.
I hope I answered your question.
I'm trying to think what I was thinking about when I was 17. What were my priorities at that time? And it's almost like you took us into the future, because now we're at a stage where we are producing a qualified tax practitioner, tax consultant that then becomes a practitioner, right? And because there's unemployment, they would start their own firm. We know, LinkedIn every week, you must congratulate someone for starting a position as a director at their own side hustle, right? So what does it really take to be a successful board member? So here I am, I've gone to LinkedIn, updated my bio. Now, you are there, www. What are you looking for in LinkedIn when you're searching for me?
First of all, I look for what does the company need.
Okay.
Because every company needs something different. Now, one thing I've got some good news for you guys. There are two things that just about every board asks me for. The one is someone with legal expertise.
Okay.
And on the other hand, it's audit, accounting, financial acumen,
Tax.
all of those buzzwords in your industry. Tax, they invariably ask for someone, now they like to call it financial acumen, but when you really have a chat to them, they say accountant, auditor. So the doors are open for you. You can bring this, but let that just be your first step. As I already said, bring your whole self. You have so many other skills aside from counting the numbers and telling people what to do with the money. From your background, one thing I've seen is that people with a financial background are really good at risk management.
Sure.
You guys have a way of seeing around the corner when it comes to risk. And one of the things that happened during COVID is it honestly blew open that space completely. Suddenly companies started looking for people with risk management expertise. So if you've already got everything, all your papers, everything you need to become a board member and to be an auditor or an accountant, your next step should be looking at what else you can study to add to that list.
Okay.
Because in as much as there are thousands of boards, the competition is really, really high. And I believe each and every one of you are going to want to be sitting on a board. So you are going to become each other's competition, which is good. But see that you bring something more than the other person.
Yeah.
So not only your background, not only your previous experiences, but take it a step further. Move outside of your comfort zone and study something, do a short course somewhere, go abroad for a couple of months
Sure.
and go get some experience somewhere in some area that you can bring back and apply to a board here.
Okay. Okay. So now I get the interview. So you found me on LinkedIn, you've inboxed me, Tabo. I met you at ABASA. This was great. Come, there's a board. Right? Listed. Now I get the interview. I'm sitting in the interview. What sets me apart from everyone else as I'm in the interview? What would be the thing that gets me hired?
Passion.
Passion.
Passion. Passion does it every single time. And then people tell me, but passion for what? And now
I'm just passionate.
now, not passion for the bold, like the bold and the beautiful passion. Please don't.
So,
But passion about either that specific board, the industry they work within, the sector. Maybe they work, if you are taking, first of all, like the previous speaker said, you might start on a not-for-profit board.
sure.
The cause that not-for-profit serves. If you want to take a board role, and this is an experience I had with a client, and this was the first time I fired a client. I didn't know you could do it until then. But when this client told me, oh, you know, I'm now a chair, and she was looking for another board role, and she said, but when I go into a room and people start asking, oh, what do you do, what do you do? And when they hear I'm the chair of this specific not-for-profit, there's a silence and everybody just listens, and I love that feeling. You know, just to, oh, it makes me feel so important, and I'm like, nope. You do not care about this organization. You do not have the passion to be there. And I fired that client. I was like, not working with you anymore. You need to be passionate about something, because the people sitting on that board, and the chair is the person who's going to have to make that final decision about your appointment. Don't let them tell you the nominations committee and this and that and the other. If you do not have the yes from the chair,
Sure.
no way you'll be appointed there.
So
And
the
if
chair-
you do get appointed, you're not going to last long. the chair is the one you need to win over.
Okay.
So if you can show that chair that you are passionate, you care, they'll hire you. If you cannot do that, do not even bother going to the interview. So find something, if you apply to a board, find something within that industry, within the company, within their cause that you are passionate about, and that will ensure you your role.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to skip Sazi and I'm going to go to Polani. So Polani, how I met Polani was that he was my assistant manager when he joined National B, manager, and you were working in a training office, right? And Polani has moved through the ranks of the Auditor General to become the Chief Financial Officer, the CFO of the organization. And you've had the experience of being a coach through the training office, and you've been the leader of a business unit that audits Treasury, SARS, the banks, the DBSA, and now you're CFO. So you've kind of seen this, right? And more importantly, you were auditing SAA and were the senior manager that led the team that uncovered a lot of the stuff that was happening there. So I've gone through the interview, I've shown the passion, I've shown the competence, my CV is right. Now I'm hired and I'm working as a director. What are some of the things that we can learn from the Zondo Commission or the era of, well, I guess, what's called state capture? Uncovering, so how, if we unpack that, what are some of the things that as a new director stepping in, I need to look out for?
Thank you very much, Godfrey, and it's a pleasure.
You can hear he still calls me Godfrey.
And a privilege to be
here. The other day, someone's like, who's Godfrey now? It's me.
I didn't know that you scratched that name.
So
yeah, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Indeed, I think as an audit office, the Auditor General of South Africa, we were there during the state capture.
Sure.
And I had a privilege myself when I was still in the front office. I'm boring now, I'm in the back office corporate. But to work with very prominent institutions
Sure.
in this country, National Treasury, like you've mentioned, SARS, etc. And one of the things that we saw, that was also an issue for us was the issue of governance, but I'm going to come there.
Sure.
But what we've done as an audit office, we've been following the State Capture Commission, I think, for all the years that it has been happening. And because we've got so much, we are so much interested and invested into that issue, Tsagane, who's our Auditor General, requested the leadership of the organization, through the leadership of the Chief Risk Officer, for us to document and read and actually come up with the lessons learned from the state capture. And the reason for that on our side is that as we were presiding over and providing assurance to government in the years of state capture, we have been reporting all the things that we've been saying. However, at the time, our findings were disregarded, basically.
Sure.
And it was great for our powers to be amended in 2019, where we've got powers now to issue material irregularities.
We've got a bigger bite.
To ensure then that there's consequence management. But the work then that we've done was to ensure then that we enhance our processes, we reflect, we do a deep introspection, which I think that is something that is great, that each institution and each person needs to do.
Sure.
Basically, there was a project team that was there. We read all 6 volumes of the State Capture Commission. And we came with about 9 themes that we have seen there. And the first one was the issue of governance. And one of the things that we've seen there is that when governance is weak, state capture and corruption thrives in that space.
Sure.
So it's one of the things that we've seen. We have seen how non-executive directors got involved in operations.
So no operations is a no-no.
No, it's not a no. It's not like it's a no-no. It's a matter of, as a director, understanding what your role is.
Sure.
Your role is to ensure that there is oversight, there's accountability. You know, there is value creation in the company where you are serving.
Sure.
But immediately where you get involved in terms of who should be getting a tender, you know, and all of those things, that's where then you see. The second issue in the 9 issues that we've identified was the lack of ethics. And the ethics were the golden thread in all 6 volumes of the report of the Zondo Commission. And what we've seen is that where there is lack of ethics, or the ethics are suppressed,
Yeah.
state capture and corruption,
Yeah.
it thrives as well.
Sure.
You know, so the issue of ethics then becomes very critical. And sometimes we talk about ethics, but you know, how do you live them? You know, then becomes very, very critical. The third issue, you know, that we've seen as an issue, as a big issue as well, was the abuse of human resource practices in the appointment of directors, especially the non-executive directors, as well as the executive directors, your chief executive officers, your chief financial officers. There was a lot of political interference that we've seen there, and it made that process to be very, very vulnerable and open then to abuse.
Sure.
And we've seen a lot of people coming in, doing favors for certain people. Then that's where then the issue of corruption, you say the issue of corruption come. And corruption was one of the themes as well that we have seen, where we've seen how the connections, you know, the select few, you know, the rings.
The cabal.
Yeah, the cabal, in terms of how then those people have actually, through their own connection, and in the pretense of transformation, have actually abused the state resources.
So transformation was used to further corruption.
Absolutely. You know, so I think those are then the key issues that we have seen. And the abuse of procurement practices
Sure.
is one of the themes. And if you see in the state capture report, there's a specific chapter that talks about procurement itself. And Chief Justice Zondo is very clear there that what you see in the legislation and what you see, what has been happening in the ground, is a chalk and cheese, you know. And if you take a step back and look at state capture as well, you'll see that this thing was a culture. You know, you can't touch it, but you can. Your gut feeling will tell you that something is not right, but it's a culture.
Sure.
You know that has been. It was a system that was, created, or the architectures in terms of how they did it. They are very smart.
Sure.
I think when it comes to when you've got a problem in your business, you need to get them. They are very, very good in terms of creating, that environment. So that is the issue of procurement, but also what we've seen also as a shortcoming as well is then the shortcomings as well in the oversight of Parliament.
Sure.
In terms of how Parliament, the oversight of them. But also this is an issue of the ecosystem as well, the issue of accountability. I think the Auditor General normally talks about the accountability ecosystem.
Sure.
Because the directors as well, even when we were there, in some cases, we forget that all of us, because the people that sits in boards, especially the audit committees, because we work a lot of audit committees, and most of the people, especially here in ABASA that wants to be in the boards, normally they sit in audit committees and finance committees, and that's basically where then all of these best practices they need to do. And for me, it was an honor and a privilege to work with some of the very seasoned members of ABASA. I think I worked with Sati at SARS.
Sure.
You know what happened at SARS. Yes. And Sati was chairing the audit committee there. And he led that audit committee with integrity, with discipline. And that was amazing. You know, so I think when number one was saying that ABASA is an incubation, myself, I
Sure.
couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more
Yeah.
on that one. Mamfuti, there at the Public Investment Corporation.
Sure.
She's currently chairing the audit government of the PIC.
Mm.
You know, and you know where the PIC is coming from.
Yeah.
You know, and working there with also when Dr. Ruel Khoza was there.
Sure.
And then Mamfuti is still chairing the audit committee. And it was amazing in terms of how we got the support as an audit office from her to ensure then that we shift the public sector culture,
Sure.
you know, in that space as well. You know, so I think those were then the key issues. There are some legislative proposals, I think, that have been made by Justice Zondo in terms of, for example, having a body to appoint the board members. But you can have that body. But if that body is compromised
captured,
itself or is captured itself, you're still not going to get anything out of it. You know, so those were in a nutshell, those were the lessons as an audit office that we have seen. And those lessons, they provided a context to us to say we need to change our strategic direction as an audit office, you know, and ensure then that we actually driving the impact in the lived realities of the people.
Sure.
You know, hence we've got a strategy now that is called #CultureShift2030. You know, because it's all about ensuring then that we work with all the stakeholders in the accountability ecosystem. And the directors in the state-owned entities are very crucial on that. And getting the support from the people that are in the same profession,
Sure.
then it becomes very, very, very crucial.
Thank you so much, Polani. Polani, everybody. Now, if I go to Sazi, so Sazi did his MPhil topic on the perception of entrepreneurs, right, on board. So I'm going to read what it says. It says, the perception that black African executives have of coaching as a tool to empower them towards business and career success. That's your topic. Why did you choose this topic? Like, why?
Passion.
And so when you studied this, you were a deputy business executive at here in Cape Town,
General,
right? At the
yes.
Auditor General. So, and why did you specifically choose coaching? So, what has been the impact of coaching on you being a successful executive that you found it very necessary to do this research?
Well, you know, I'm one of those people that when I work with people, I get calls. Right?
Sure.
Someone will say, hey, I'm at this place. You are always telling us just because you worked in the public sector, you know, you're not inferior to the private sector.
Yeah.
And now I'm in this place. I used to complain about you. You are so hard on us. But now I discover that I know so much. Thank you so much. So I
Sure.
found that.
You did that to me.
You
was my
reported to
training
me as
officer.
So I found that development of people and trying to understand what's going on in the minds of people and why people do what they do.
Sure.
Has been a passion for me.
Right.
And I later, when I started, as you say, introspecting, say, how did I become a chartered accountant? I actually became a chartered accountant because I got a bursary from Deloitte. You know, so it was wonderful. I got that opportunity. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm fortunate that I understand numbers. I can do that. But my real passion is to unearth the talent that we all have within us. So, and I'm a believer in continuous learning, always growing. So one of the things I've been fortunate about, especially within the Auditor General, there was a program at the time that was focusing on mentorship. So I got a lot of mentorship, and I was that person who just asked everyone for a mentor. Yeah, can you mentor me? Can you mentor me? You know, I'm going into the executive suites. I just ask. If they say no, they say no.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate that I got a lot of mentoring within the Auditor General and also outside of that. I've also got a background in my family where people were quite entrepreneurial.
Sure.
So it really made sense to me, especially because I've got a strong conviction that 1994 was not the end of the struggle.
Sure.
You know, it was really just a stepping stone that gave us these opportunities to sit where we are sitting now when previously we could not sit. So I have this.
Cape Town.
Cape Town.
Who would have thought?
So for instance, this thing of being desensitized. You know, I marvel when I speak to certain people and they get off the airport and they drive, and it's like we don't notice, right? And I feel like our place in history is to be pioneers. We are the first of, we're like a yeast if you look at the biblical references. And therefore we dare not forget the people who come after us.
Sure.
So when I was looking into all of this, how do you do it? I found that the key thing is really working with the mind of the individual.
I see. Okay.
So that's what led to me taking up coaching.
So now you go through first year. What were some of the things that you've uncovered when you were doing the masters around executives and needing coaching? What's the value?
Well, one that was very surprising for me, I didn't anticipate it. It wasn't part of the hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah.
Was the fact that we all know about coaching. When you talk to people who say, no, I know coaching. Oh, everyone needs coaching all the time. It's valuable. Wow. So, well, have you done coaching? No, I haven't done coaching. Why? And then of the people that I found that had done coaching, they only did it because the corporate sponsored it.
Okay. So they did coaching or received coaching?
They received coaching.
Okay.
They were coached because their company put them on a program and they paid.
Sure.
But they're not willing to pay for it themselves. It was a very surprising one for me.
So you didn't think there was anyone like that in life?
By the way, I got coaching through corporate as well, but I didn't know about it before then. But I was surprised also by some of the very senior executives who've never been coached. You understand? So that was one of the very surprising ones for me. And it led me down a rabbit hole where I've actually come to conclude that many of us, when we think about education, I think we think that education is a certificate.
Sure.
Whereas that is a certification of the value that sits within you. And it means that you have the ability to go and get additional knowledge for yourself, as you live your life. So coaching, that was one. The second one was around culture. There's a very strong move now of black executives who are saying, well, we're tired of always being told that we need to develop a little bit more and we must get this person or that person who I have to explain what is a basic cultural term in my space, right? If I say Mbele or a Xhosa person, I don't have to explain that.
Sure.
They just know, right? Welcoming the child and introducing the, So there's that cultural shift to say black executives now are demanding to be coached by black people who have a cultural context, right? There's definitely, also I see that with psychologists as well. I interact with psychologists. So those are the two main things that came out from that.
And your research focuses mostly on SMMEs, right?
It was SMMEs and also executives in corporate.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, earlier we spoke about the side hustle, right? That we all have of doing books and speaking to our guys at site to help us with the text. As someone who is running their own small firm, right? What value can I extract? And this is for you and Elmarie specifically on the coaching side. What value can I extract from paying 2.5 an hour for an executive coach, for example? Why would I need now a coach? I know I need one, right?
You do.
And now I have a budget. I know I can find 2,500 somewhere, but now I need to press that pay button. I've made the decision that I need coaching. What does it promise for me as an executive? What can I get out of it?
Well, before Elmarie comes in, we were actually having a conversation earlier. When we came in by coincidence, we came in at the same time.
The coaches found each other.
Found each other, yeah. So I was lost, she was asking for directions, and then I listened
coached her here.
But, you see, when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business,
sure,
you are the finance director.
My man.
You are the HR director.
Jomosono vibes.
You are the marketing director. You drive the bus.
Yeah.
And therefore, it can become very overwhelming.
Sure.
And disorganized. And you get in your own way. You forget this, and it can also be very lonely, right? Some people, even their personal relationships begin to suffer because you've got this one person says, "Hey, the kids, I can't carry this load." But one moment you're up. The next moment you're down, because you really figure it. And then you're really trying to teach yourself, right? For many people. So one of the roles when I coach SMMEs is almost like a board of advisors to help them carry the thinking load, and also to help them identify some of the collaborations that they can have and build an ecosystem around themselves so that they don't have to do everything
Got
themselves.
you. Yeah, so it's a community as well.
That's that. And then the thing we were talking about with El Marie was that as a coach, you get to hear so many stories from so many people. Your network, you understand? You talk
Yeah.
to that executive there, you talk to that.
Sure.
So you get to see a bigger picture of what's happening, and like, no, but I had a coaching with someone, you know, let me just make sure the confidentiality is in place, but you're looking for this and that person's looking for, you
Connect.
understand?
Sure.
So it's really that. So it's also offering those networks
I see.
To the people. Yeah,
Got
that's a big one as well.
Thank you so much. Almarie?
Now, to me, and this is something you often hear in the coaching spaces, we hold the space for our client. I can already, when the client comes through the door, I can see where they are headed. I can
Okay.
see where they can get to, and they usually cannot. So the whole journey through their coaching
Sure.
is taking them to be where they are the best they can be in whatever area they are being coached. And with me, it's with boards.
I see.
So I help develop ethical board members, trustworthy board members, competent board members.
Sure.
But I can see who they can be. And I'm just the one who holds that space. And it's almost like you shine the light for them there.
Sure.
And they come through the darkness to this light. And it's as easy as that.
Okay. All right. So now we've got members, right? So I'm a SIPA member, I'm an ACCA member, I'm a CIMA member, I'm a CA, I'm an RGA, right? And I noticed that someone has an NGO, so that conversation becomes easy. You've got a nonprofit, I've got this experience, I've got tax experience, I want to join in, I can sit on your board. How do I approach an SMME? You know, how do I approach a small business that I can see the potential, what you've just described, I can see it. And this person, like Sazi has defined, is the Jomosono of that company. They do everything in the company, all right? How do I speak to them in a way that they understand the need and that they can leverage off my skills and experience to help their SMME go further? Where do we start that conversation? I'm sure a lot of you are sitting, there's a lot of people here that want to help. So how do I do that? Andila, I know this is your space as well, so I'll come to you.
Now you're taking what I teach in my course. So now this is usually at least a 2-hour session, so I'm going to just quickly put it in a minute. What you do is you get yourself ready to research. And that's one of the things with the board search journey. And if you ever are in a program with me, I talk about research every single session, because you do different levels of research with every part of your board search.
Sure.
So for you, if you are, for instance, interested in a board role with Barlow World, so let's name drop you, then, then you go and you research Barlow World. Not just online research, you do that in-person research. So you look at your LinkedIn profile and you look at your connections on LinkedIn. Because that is, I live on LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. So you go to LinkedIn, you go look at who is connected with Barlow World, who will be able to give me some insight. Get what they need.
We know it's Dante here.
Find out what their pain points are,
Yep.
and see how you can meet that
I
need.
got you, sure.
And approach them in that way. Because if you come with a solution, they probably will not say no.
Okay. All right. Okay, so in the interest of time, we've got 10 minutes, and I know there would be, some questions. I want to open. Oh, there we go. Who's going to help me with the mic? Volunteers? Here. Okay, so I'm seeing 2 hands at the back. 3, 4. Yo, this is going to be a long one. Okay, so you can go there. I've noted.
They don't want to go home.
Whoa.
They don't
I see
wanna
there's
go
a lot of us
home.
that want to sit on boards, eh? Is that the 250,000 USD that's inspired us? Over to you.
I have 2 points. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panel. Maybe 3. One is that one of my businesses does enterprise and supply development programs on behalf of corporates.
Yeah.
The business called I'm an Entrepreneur, and what we do, one of our products is an advisory boards program. So in Sabari, kind of larger SMEs, so let's call them more medium-sized businesses, that are suppliers to our clients. Our client pays us to set up an advisory board to help that entrepreneur and that SME with strategy, growth, and. So if anybody here is interested to serve on those advisory boards, we pay a very little stipend, but we do pay. People like Gandhi donate the money to ABASA. That's how little we pay. But if you are interested, we're always looking for financial skills, especially, and by financials I include tax. So if anybody's interested, just give me your details, and I can certainly, and it's a great place to start. It's a small business. It's quite a controlled environment. So that's the first point I want to raise. The second point I wanted to ask is a question actually for the AG. One of the programs that ABASA, certainly for as long as I've been involved in ABASA, I've heard about this, but we haven't quite pulled it off. And that is how to get ABASA members, or at least chartered accountants, to serve on public sector, let me call them structures. So whether it's a municipality, a district one, a local one. For example, I'm from Umlazi. I would love to sit, I don't know what the right platform is, to support, because all I ever hear when the AG puts out their report is the fact that there's no skills in these municipalities. Here we are with all the skills, but for some reason, we can't get there to help you solve some of the things you keep reporting about. Maybe someone can explain to me why we can't get this right. But I certainly like us to think about it. And now, because I'm getting old, I forgot the last point.
You said there were two. You mentioned two.
I just remembered.
Okay.
And this is a question for the more experienced board members here. And the panel can take it. Maybe Prajef and Sisfuti can think about it. And that is the point about diversity of boards. My lady mentioned the point. I find that boards or companies or listed companies say they want diversity. And by diversity, I don't necessarily mean
black.
I don't necessarily mean black or even male, female. I mean diversity of thoughts. But actually, they're quite boxed. We want a CA, but the CA we want must have been an audit partner who signed off financials so that he can be chairman of the audit committee. Or we're looking for an IT person, they don't want an accountant who's got, other skills or other things to offer. They like the boxes. And I suspect the problem might be with chairpersons and the people in the NOMCOs who just do what's always been done. And when you look at things like Stanhoff and corporate failures, and you ask yourself how everybody missed these things, yes, of course I can sympathize with board members, but I do think that part of the problem is that we don't actually have diversity of thoughts on boards. We box people. We must have an HR tick. We must have an auditor tick. We don't have people that actually... So I'm interested to hear from those that sit on boards, especially Prajef, because he sits on some of the biggest boards in the country. Why is that? How is it that we don't quite get enough diversity of thoughts and backgrounds on these boards?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lukona?
Must I hand it to the other pinky?
Yes.
Pinky. And then you don't want political scientists on boards. Yet you function in an environment of political risk. It's interesting things. And I want to ask the AG as well to say, Olani, you spoke about the 6 volumes and the absence of ethics. I wonder if we are not euphemising, whatever. A euphemism when you talk about absence of ethics, because the ethics don't leave. They don't escape anybody. People decide to opt out of the ethics. And so when we say there's an absence of ethics, what are we talking about? Because we have to define the problem properly. At some point between the transition from PIC and when he had a corner office without a job description and then going to public service, something turned on Brian Molive. He knew the ethics. And that's why Judge Zondo was frustrated with Queen Anna. He said, but you're a chartered accountant.
Hey, look on, now what are you doing?
You're a chartered accountant. Just for emphasis. But the point there was that you know what to do. When Baleka Mbete was Speaker of the National Assembly here in Cape Town, she had been the Speaker under Mbeki. She knew what to do. So what are we talking about, really, when we say there's an absence of ethics? Because it comes back to what Andile is raising. And Umbali was raising, you say, you know, ABASA, the skills, the civil service, and so on. But if the municipal manager doesn't want you there,
they don't want you.
And they just killed an internal auditor, how are you going to make entry? Right? So the thing for me is, I think we really need to locate the problem in order for us to respond. Because if there is capture of these structures, ethical people will be amputated out of the structures. So the ethics don't leave, but something changes. And I wonder if in your work at the AG, you are considering to express these things in non-euphemism language.
Sure. Okay, noted. Noted, thank you. President Gugu, and then we'll come for responses. And I see there's 2 more hands, and there's 3 minutes there, I can see. They already sent an interesting message there that I read, but anyway, yeah.
All right, afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Godfrey, for the opportunity. Number 4 in the second decade standing. I think, first of all, you know, when we talk about these kind of opportunities, we have to also shine a light on our own in terms of those who are in these spaces. So,
sure.
Though she will not mention it, my president over here herself also offers, or will be looking to offer, these coaching type services and the like. So in turn, for those in the room who are maybe thinking, who can I reach out to? I think Usazu even mentioned around being coached by our own understanding,
sure.
person who understands your own background, who perhaps can help guide you accordingly. But on that same type of theme, and perhaps even linked to President Kumalo's comment earlier, when you then think around the opportunities from a board perspective, if you do not know certain individuals, your brajes, etc., if I'm a nobody, I'm just walking the streets of this country, but I believe I can favorably contribute in these capacities. I also don't have the hue that is applicable in terms of then falling into certain circles, etc. How then do I still stand an equal chance for being appointed onto these? Because one aspect I have seen is that common trend as well. You can almost, if you look at who has been appointed or who is on that board, you can somewhat link some of the individuals in some manner.
The network.
So in turn, is there that openness? And I think, Elmarie, you seem to lean on that that is. However, I guess from what I've observed, it seems as though there's definitely always some connection somehow. And in turn, how do I then become part of that circle or know those individuals so that one equally doesn't feel like I don't have a fair chance because I know, okay, her CV comes with a few backgrounds, mine perhaps doesn't come with those endorsements.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So before I take the 2 hands, I would like to hand over to number 1 to respond, and perhaps in the response you'll be able to answer some of the questions.
So can I just thank you, Andile, for giving me an opportunity to sell another book, okay? So I have dealt with this topic quite extensively in the book, to be honest with you. But I just want to give you one example, and it's a very, very important principle. Because we're talking about being boxed in, like in corporate, right? You're a chartered accountant, you're being boxed in. For me, the important principle is that, when you say you're allowing yourself to be boxed in, you are disempowering yourself because other people are making the decisions for you. So I'm just saying that, you need to take a more sort of empowered position and basically say that I'm going to allow myself to be boxed in, right? I'm a chartered accountant, but I'm going to allow myself. So for example, and I know the clock is ticking.
Yeah,
but
it's at
I can do this
-3.
I can do this in half a minute. I can do this in half a minute. So, for example, when I was shortlisted for a directorship of Pick and Pay, I was told that I was never going to get. They were looking for a chartered accountant, chair audit committee. I was told I'll never get that position. And the reason why I was told I would never get the position, not by the headhunters, by you people that you talk to, etc. They said, for starters, Jeff, you're black. And secondly, you're also not Jewish, right? And it's, it's a Jewish sort of controlled company, and so don't even bother, right? But I didn't allow any of those people, when, you always have to understand when people give you that kind of advice, what is the lens that they are using, right? The lens that they are using is based on their own strengths and weaknesses,
Sure.
right? And you must never allow anyone to impose their strengths and weaknesses upon you, and it is for that reason that I decided I'm putting myself forward. Cut a long story short, there is a longer story in the book, of course.
chapter 6.
Then I got the appointment. Now I'm there, the chairman of the audit committee. I said, hey, but you know what? It'd be nice to get onto the REMCO. So I go to the chairman. I said, listen, I'm no specialized accountant, but I'd like to get onto the REMCO. Pushed hard, got onto the REMCO. Right. Then the position of lead independent director became available. I thought, hey, that would be nice. Went, pushed myself, I'm now the lead independent director. So all I'm saying is, guys, take control of your lives, right? Take control of your lives, take control of your destiny, push as hard as you can. You know yourself better than anyone else. Okay?
Thank you so much.
So be empowered, don't be a victim. Don't take that, I'm being boxed in, because ultimately you're allowing yourself to be boxed in.
Sure. Okay, so I've noted the 2 hands. But just in the interest of time, I want to get responses, and then maybe if we can, then. Right. Okay, so before you answer, panelists, I want to announce that we would like to do a series as part of the leadership committee on leadership development, but specifically on board and director development. Those who are in favor say aye. Okay? Aye. So it's passed, the motion has passed. And in that series, I would want, and I'm sure you could see, the experience that's here. I mean, 30 minutes is not enough for us to unpack, and I would want us to unpack further these discussions in there, because I don't think it's something that we can take in one, sitting and then be able to implement. Okay. So before you answer, just you can always say that the rest will be discussed in the in the series. Thank you. Yeah. I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, maybe let me go
Euphemism.
first. Yeah, that is very interesting, the euphemism. But let me start with the question from number 12. I think, how do you get people from the board? Number 12, he was once the board member at SAA the other time.
Yes,
and then you left, you were gone. I don't know what happened. You still gonna tell me what happened? But as I think, as an audit officer on our side, how do you get to serve in the boards? These institutions need to advertise the positions. It needs to be a competition. It needs to be a fair process that there's audit trail. I talked about governance and all of those things, because once you get into a situation whereby people, they get preference and stuff. But I think ABASA, as a body itself, in terms of then ensuring then that it's got relationships with these government institutions like your SALGA in the municipalities, your Department of Public Enterprises, or maybe other big departments that have got big state-owned entities, Treasury and stuff, so that when those positions they come and then they get advertised, at least the members of ABASA have got access to, they know in terms of what is happening. I think that's all I can say. And then I think the issue of ethics is, it's the first time I'm hearing that word anyway, euphorism. But but I think what is important, you see, when we talk about ethics, I was attending on Thursday night after the golf, the book, the launch of the book for number 1. And I listened to the CEO of SAICA, Mr. Freeman Nomvalo, and he did a very good speech about leadership. you know, in terms of then the role of leadership, you know, and also why leaders they serve in the positions that they serve in. And one of the most critical thing that he talked about is the issue that when you serve, it's a privilege, and you don't serve for yourself. Because once you start as a board member, as a chairperson of the board, when you know you are actually entrusted with a responsibility, because there are fiduciary responsibilities as a board member that you have. Key to that is to ensure then that the issue of public interest, you know, is served. And for us as accountants, if you look at, we've got code of ethics, you know, and we've got fundamental principles there, you know, in terms of ensuring then that there's integrity, there's objectivity, you know, professional competence and due care, you know, in terms of what you do. And once you breach or you non-comply then with that code, then that's where then you talk about lack of ethics, or there is no ethics, you know, that we see. But what is important as well in terms of what we see on the opposite side, and I know that you said that people that do not that have got ethics, they get amputated. That is true, but the commission made a very important observation about Treasury. You know, in terms of how National Treasury didn't get captured. You know, and it was the demeanor of the officials that were at Treasury at the time in terms of how they resisted the state capture. And because they understood what the mandate of Treasury is, the functions of National Treasury is, and with their own professional competence and experience, they managed to actually push back. And Treasury was not captured as a result of that.
Sure, yeah.
You know, so I think it's important to understand the power of ethical people. In terms of ethical people as well, they've got that ability to actually ensure that there is no ethics, so that there is ethics in the environment, in the space. I think that's basically how I can actually make the example. But if you look on the other side also, the commission made example of how at SAA things were done,
Sure.
at Dinel,
Yep.
you know, in terms of how things were done, and the impact that has done. Dinel, for example, employees of Dinel they don't get paid at times. That is not nice. If you look at the resources, myself when I started auditing Treasury about more than 10 years ago, we're sitting with about just over 600 billion in terms of the government debt. We are actually sitting now at about 4.7 trillion rands in terms of then the government debt, and it's because of how the resources of the country were actually wasted,
Sure.
you know, and all of those things. So it's all about that. And sometimes the action that we do, we don't know in terms of then the impact then that it has to the citizenry,
Sure.
you know, of the country as
All
well.
right, thank you so much. Is there any question that we haven't answered in this round? Okay, so I'll take the last three hands and then we'll conclude. Mamfuti? There was a hand here? Oh, it's still there. Right.
Thank you very much to the panelists. Mine is a kind of, I'm trying to find a good word, maybe a challenge to ABASA.
Sure.
In the morning, we had the panel that was speaking about the time, the call of this time to us as leaders and the role of ABASA. And then somewhere at the back there, I had another question that was asked kind of indirectly to me to say, ethics never left the room. So what happened?
Sure.
I just want to say that as ABASA, we have to revisit our role in this space.
Sure.
Firstly, by speaking out very quickly. So where are our members sitting? They sit in the first line of defense, accounting department. They sit in senior management, they sit in CFOs. At that CFO, no money leaves an institution unless that chartered accountant signs it out, right? Then they sit in the audit committee. which is a little bit too late, the money is gone. And then poor auditors come tagging along at the end of the year. Everything is done and dusted.
Sure.
And guess who remains with the question? They do. And I want to say, and I have said this to our past presidents because we sit around and chat, we have been very, very silent at that time. And we cannot do that going forward because if we don't, then we will not be supporting what the individuals in this country who want to build this country for all of us and for our children and our children's children want to do. Our voice needs to be heard real time.
100%.
Thank you.
We support that because also as young people, we sometimes we can't talk unless the people that lead us and come before us have spoken. So I think it's very liberating for some of us as well to hear. Thank you, Ma'am Futi. Ma'am, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you to the panel for the insightful discussion. Hi everybody, my name is Rosanna and I am a second-year SAICA trainee with ABASA. I also serve as the Vice President of the ABASA Wakanda Toastmasters Club as well as the Social Committee for the ABASA Accounting Training Program. Now, the extended detail on myself was for the benefit of Mr. Kumalo as my formal application for the advisory board.
That's right.
My question is to Al-Marie regarding the 17-year-old young lady that you helped get onto a board. Leadership is very important to me, not for power's sake, but because I believe that being in a leadership position is one of the best ways to make an impact in areas that you are passionate about. So I've been thinking in my mind that it's going to be about 10 to 15 years before I have enough experience to be considered credible enough to be on a board. So I'd like to know, how did you get those organizations to see this young lady as someone who would actually add value to the organization? Thank you.
Her first role came from a youth board. So this is a community organization that was working in New South Wales in Australia, and her first role came from there. So she became almost like a community member of this not-for-profit board, and that led to more board roles for her. So anywhere where a board is going into the youth space or working with youth, one of the areas she's looking at the moment is where boards, medical boards, are looking at young people and their experience with COVID and everything that happened there. And she's now looking at serving on one of those boards. So in a very advisory capacity, I would say. So not a board member as such, where you have your corporate board with all these governance issues. So more so, she's being the voice of the young person on the board. And I can honestly tell you, I actually wrote an article probably a year ago about where do you start? You are not too young or too old to start your board career, because oftentimes we see that people wait too long. We had this antiquated idea of you must have been a CEO for 30 years, you studied, you've gone through everything, been a CEO for 30 years, now you're getting ready to retire, so now you apply for a board role. That's not how it works anymore, because boards are agile, boards need to pivot quickly, and oftentimes the one who's already 65 years old doesn't feel like pivoting anymore. So boards need these young voices. So start.
Yep. Thank you so much. There was another hand there. No, I haven't. I apologize. We are here now. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'll cut to the chase. Marie, if Marcus USA approached you today for counseling, what would you advise him?
Sure.
Yo.
Hey.
I thought it's only the coaches who ask the hard questions.
I know.
With Marcus Jooste, I would say be vulnerable. Because now I might sound like Brene Brown a little bit. But we need to have empathy, first of all, with those leaders, because as much as we want to be angry with someone like Marcus Jooste, they lived what they learned. So we needed our parents to change our view. So first of all, I would look at Marcus Jooste with some empathy, not just because I'm white, but because I understand that anyone can make a mistake. And then I would tell him, be vulnerable. And that's actually what I would like our government to do, is to turn around and say, listen, we are sorry that we did this. We are sorry that we weren't the gatekeepers we are supposed to be. And if Marcus Jooste can show that kind of vulnerability, I'm sure there will be forgiveness for him to a large extent. He'll still have to pay a price, obviously. But if he really wants to move forward, he will need to show the human who Marcus Jooste really is.
And on the fact that boards are family made. Mm-hmm. It's families that begin businesses.
Yeah.
And there will always be that vested interest of having some measure of control as to what happens to the wealth of the family and who ought to lead it or mold it.
Yeah, in the case of those family boards, obviously, they do tend to hold the reins really tight. But I think there it's a case of we need to look at legislation, where once it's a board that operates that way, there needs to be some more oversight over it, so that we can see that the systems that are put in place are above board, and that something like that has happened don't keep on happening again and again. Because it's when they play their cards so close to their chest, and it's all cloak and dagger stuff, and that happens everywhere, at every level. It's when they open up, and they become vulnerable, they become open, and they say, listen, we made a mistake here, this is how we're going to fix it. Then we can trust them again.
Thank you. Number one, you're in good hands at P&P.
I just want to, that lady asked something about the networking earlier.
Yes.
How to get on a board. I can tell you there's been various research studies done, and the numbers show that one research study said at the very least, 67% of board appointments. And there's one that was done in the UK where they said at least 80% of board appointments are being made through a connection.
Sure.
But please don't see that as bad news, because there are ways to build the right connections in a very short space of time that can see you. But it's a question of which connections you need to build, and that's where we'll have to take that discussion further, because it's a whole series.
Come on now. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank my panel. I know Sazi came with a PowerPoint presentation. I'm so sorry, we were out of time. That's what happens when we are last. But thank you so much for making the time. And thank you so much for sharing. I think the conversation needs to be unpacked even further, because a lot more of our members need to be on board, and a lot more need to be driving SMMEs and creating more employment opportunities, and also using the NGO space. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hosting the series with you with some of those questions that I've sent you, and we'll unpack those. Ladies and gentlemen, the panel. All right, so we are officially into the networking segment of this convention. But before that, I would like to just make a few notes from the takeaways that I've written down. And I like summarizing my minutes so that I kind of know where we are going. So one of the key takeaways is that we need to go back to why ABASA was started. It had a different problem then, and now we need to then say, what is the problem today? Another thing that I found very valuable is having number one, for example, in the studio, having past presidents in the studio and stalwarts and people that are experts sharing the knowledge. So I think it's going to be very important for us to continue having these conversations, even if it's on a monthly basis, where we have leadership talks, where we uncover a topic at a time and we can work on it. And within ABASA, because of the great diversity that we have, we now need to start looking into the different passions that everyone around here may have. Whether you have a passion for NGOs, not necessarily just to sit on the board, but also to volunteer and do other stuff. Right? If you have passion for SMEs like Andil, I'm sure it was the passion that led you to starting I Am an Entrepreneur. I've also learned that as ABASA members, we mustn't believe that we exist inside this bubble where there is no political. And I think, Lukona, you've summarized it very nicely now to say we need to be very mindful of our political stance for some of the things that we are doing, so that the programs that we drive within ABASA can have a bit of direction, or at least can be linked to something. Another thing that I wrote down, and this is particularly for the past presidents, is the issue of succession planning. When you listen to the conversation with NABA, there's a lot that was done, there was a lot that was started, but somewhere along the line we lose traction. Whether it's a branch where we used to have a relationship with a premier, and the premier doesn't change, the branch changes, but that branch loses that relationship with the premier. Now we need to start from scratch. So we now need to look into the efficiencies. And I only wrote one resolution here. And one of the resolution that I wrote is that perhaps it's time for us to go to the CEO of the Internal Institute of Internal Auditors and say, can you and your institution come into ABASA, look into our business, and see how you can help us. Let's do a gap analysis, help us so that we can improve. Go to SAIPA. Here we are, our financials, here's our tax issues, here's this, here's that, there's that. How can you assist us? Go to CIMA from a cost management perspective, strategy, ACCA, SAICA, SAIGA, and so on. It will now become time for ABASA to start leveraging off the relationships that we have with our MOU partners to strengthen the organization internally so that we know from a governance perspective we're solid, and then from then we can take it from there. Now that's them saying it's time to leave. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for a successful convention. There's that man's name is Ludwig, please. Hendrik, sorry. So, Hendrik has got parking tickets. For those that have parked here, you can swap your tickets with that. So thank you so much for a productive 3 days. This has been inspirational, and I would also encourage everybody to volunteer and play a more active role in ABASA. And I can then officially close, and I'll see you tonight at the gala dinner. Thank you. Banya.